So now is my great pleasure, as the last talk of the day. Have you enjoyed all of the talks so far up in this room? Right, better than the ones downstairs, right? Yeah, cool. Karl is my colleague and former friend. No, wait, no, I did. Hang on. I've read that wrong. He's my former colleague and friend. He used to be an actual Nazi hunter, used to go around decking Nazis, so I think perhaps he should collaborate with Mike, so that's kind of cool. He's the creator of Tenon, which is the most reliable, comprehensive, versatile, and sexy accessibility testing tool available, so you should check that out. That's really good. And Karl is going to talk about JavaScript and accessibility, which to me doesn't make any sense because, of course, we all know that screen readers don't understand JavaScript, don't we, Karl? So please, that's not true, by the way. I just want to make that clear now, but Karl will make it clearer himself. So please welcome to the stage, Karl.
All right. Hello. Hello. All right, it works. Yay! I got to give you, how many pints is that now? Is it 2 pints? It's a pint per adjective for each. Yeah, okay, great. Thank you all for coming, and thank you all for being here and staying here. I'll try to make this talk as unboring as possible, knowing it's the last one. And if you just decide it sucks bad and it was boring, I'll just buy you a pint too, so whatever. This talk actually is a big trick. I'm going to trick you guys into believing that there's some rock star awesome shit that you need to learn for JavaScript and accessibility. But it really is sort of my soft sell on accessibility and UX and sort of making it obvious and easy to understand. When it comes to UI design, you'll see soon that I am a highly skilled designer, and I'm definitely on par with all the best designers that have been here. I have the best designs. People love them. Okay. Look at the crowd. It's amazing. Okay, so that's my political stuff. But when it comes to UI design, I think Luke W. said it best, is obvious always wins. And really, the reason why obvious always wins, and especially for accessibility, is so that we can answer a question for the user. We're answering a question for the user. What is this thing, and what does it do? Okay? Because once a user sees an interface, once they see a control on the interface, they need to really be able to understand immediately what's going to happen when they interact with it, right? So you know if you see radio buttons, what happens? That you can select one and only one of the set, right? Checkbox, you can select none, some, or all, right? Come on, wake up! Seriously! Yeah, yes, that's exactly it. So when a user of an assistive technology comes upon a checkbox, they also need to know what is this thing and what does it do. Now, a screen reader, if you've never heard one, you will today. A screen reader conveys all of that information from the DOM. So what happens is the user's browser requests the website brings in all the assets, all that awesome stuff. JavaScript, CSS modify the user interface. And what happens at the screen reader level is nothing until they get that information from what's called an accessibility API. The accessibility API renders to the user a couple of key points about each object. Name, state, role, and value. In other words, what is this thing and what does it do? Now, that happens to be, name, state, role, and value happens to be WCAG 4.1.2, which is the last WCAG success criteria, if you study all of them. Anybody want me to name all 61? Okay. The thing about accessibility that makes it seem extremely boring is all the documentation and all the stuff around compliance and all this sort of stuff. So if you were to print out the Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, just the normative part, it's going to be like 74 pages. But if you print out the normative part and all the informative parts, such as the understanding WCAG, because obviously if you have to have an understanding document for WCAG, then each technique and failure and all that sort of stuff, it's roughly about 1,200 pounds of paper, which I thought was interesting. This building used to be a paper mill, apparently. And so 1,200 sheets of paper is roughly equivalent to the amount of shit produced by a sheep in a given day. And really all I care about you guys understanding from today forward is understanding what is this thing and what does it do. Answer that question for your users and the user interface will be more accessible. Now I'm going to show you what that's like when it comes to JavaScript accessibility. That's the only slide I had, so if you... So now comes the terrifying part where I actually do code and stuff like that. But yeah, take notes, because there's all that content there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to build a dialogue. A dialogue is not a terribly complex piece of code. You're basically taking one part of the page that is previously hidden, and now you're showing it. Woohoo! But the creation of a dialogue and the creation of all the user interaction from a dialogue really is a proxy for all of the other stuff that you're ever going to do when it comes to accessibility and JavaScript. Are you showing and hiding stuff? Do you have a custom control that updates something else on the screen? Are you bringing in Ajax? All that sort of stuff is all mostly going to be the same principles that we're talking about today. So basically, we have our dialogue code here at the very bottom of the page. Here's the rest of our HTML document. Really not rocket science. So here's our page here. This is an essay written by Mark Twain, who happens to be my favorite author, and also my kindred spirit here when trying to learn German. He goes into all sorts of really great things about how confusing it is. So, yeah, and how appropriate it is it for me to be here and talking about that. Okay, so a dialogue. What does a dialogue do? I'll just stand here until somebody blurts it out. It shows a portion of the page, right? So the first part of our code is going to be to create an object. This object has two methods, open and close, right? We're opening a dialogue, and then eventually we're going to close it. This step 2 here actually shows what we're going to be doing. We create an overlay, right? To make something seem modal, we have to gray out part of the screen, gray out the parent document, so then we make the dialogue itself appear to have focus, our visual attention is taken to it. In fact, that's kind of what modalism is just switching the interaction mode for the user. So we inject our overlay code, and then we unhide our dialogue and position it in the middle of the screen. Nothing too crazy. So AXS dialogue open, yay, and close, yay. So we have a problem though. The user's not going to be going into console to open this thing. Are they? Okay. I hope not. All right, cool. So step 3. In step 3, what we want to do is open the dialog from a button. Big deal, right? Let's change that. I like the TV chef kind of approach here. No, it's done. Okay, so we want to open it by clicking the button. There you go. There's the button. But there's another problem. This focus goes nowhere. Let me show you what happens here. Anybody ever heard the term hocus pocus?
VoiceOver on Chrome, everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility in 40 minutes. Window, everything link, super awesome company, link, home, list link, products. You are currently on a link. VoiceOver off.
I told you guys I was a really good designer. Look at that. But this super awesome co really does do some cool stuff. They sell tartan paint, copper magnets. They actually specialize in yak shaving, so that might be good for some of Jeff Gothelf's clients, the yak shaving and shed painting. Anyway, so we'll go over here.
VoiceOver
Let's launch the dialogue.
Link. Mark Twain, main 26
that
items.
was not a button. It didn't get focused.
Link, services.
Okay, so I'll click it.
You are currently on a link. To click this link, link, cert link, cont link, email address, edit text.
Holy
You are
shit.
current VoiceOver off.
This is by far the #1 biggest problem with Ajax content and any other content like dialogues and lightboxes and stuff like that from an accessibility perspective, is not shifting focus where it needs to go. And again, the common pattern, of course, is to not do that. The common pattern is to put that thing at the bottom of the page or something like that. And so, of course, it's going to be the very last thing anybody interacts with. The other thing we noticed, actually, is that this thing is not really truly modal. So anyway, step 3, our problem is focus goes nowhere. Where should it go when the dialogue is opened? So at the very least, right, to the dialogue. It's got to go to the dialogue. If our visual attention is now placed there, our programmatic focus needs to go there so the user can interact with it. If you can't see it, you're not going to know where it is. Okay, so step 4. So step 4, basically all we have to do is just shift focus to the item. So I do set attribute tab index equals -1 to help deal with some focus management issues in certain browsers, and then this dialog dot focus. Holy crap, is that hard or what? I mean, for accessibility, the accessibility improvement that we're going to see in a second, that is some seriously awesome code, and you should all hire me to do your JavaScript.
Voiceover on link, services. You are currently on a login email address, password, email address, edit text. You are current password, secure edit login button. You are
Awesome,
currently
right?
on a button inside of a region. To click this button, press Control, voiceover off.
So now, like, what if we didn't want that there? User interaction design should always take into consideration not just the success path, but the holy shit, I don't want to do this path, right? Get me out of here. The universal keystroke for undo or stop this thing, what is that? Anybody know? Escape key, bang. That's hard too. Look at how hard this is to do binding a key event to this thing. So step 5, we're going to document on key down. Escape key is pressed. If our key code is 27, escape key is pressed. And now we're going to close the dialog as well. So now we can close it. Yes, I could. That is why I'm using Atom, actually, because IntelliJ sucks at that. Cool. All right. So let's hear this now with VoiceOver.
VoiceOver on Chrome, link, products.
Damn it, that
You are
button's
currently
still
on a
not
link.
keyboard accessible.
To click this link, press login email address, password, everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility in 40 minutes. Web content. You are currently on web content. Muting.
Shut up. Okay. So one of the really cool features about VoiceOver is the fact that it gives you that black rectangle around whatever has focus. So what has focus now? Yeah. So what happens is browsers keep an internal reference to the currently focused item. And so that's how it knows whether when you hit Shift and Tab to go backwards or you hit Tab to go forwards, it knows how to do that because it's keeping an internal reference to the currently focused item. Now we have destroyed the thing that had focus, and now we have hocus focus.
Link.
So what happens
VoiceOver
is,
off.
in this user interface, obviously it's too simplistic, but what happens is, essentially the browser goes, fuck it, and goes back to the top. And it starts over at the top. Now imagine your user interface is probably a little bit more complex than this, and focus is going to go back to the top, completely losing the user entirely. I keep neurotically looking at my timer here to make sure I have enough time. All right, so step 6. So we're going to do an accessible key down on the sign-in button, which is great. And we also need to put that thing in the tab order, because have you guys noticed that I never get focus on that? So
VoiceOver link, sign in, login email address, password, muting.
another incredibly difficult thing to do is to put tab index equals 0 on an interactive control. Actually, what I could have done is just use a button element, right? Like, because that's got all the stuff we need. But God, we really like divs and spans for our buttons. So, all right. So step 7. So step 7, we need a close button. It's really great that we can hit the escape key to escape out of the dialog, but we also need to do something that's going to make that actually work. All right, step 7.
Everything you need to know about link, sign in, group, login, email address, password, login, region. You are currently on a reload this page. Everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility in 4.0 Atom, in Chrome. Reload this page. Sign, login, email address, voiceover off.
Well, there goes my close button. Where were you, close button? Yeah, we're going to skip that one, all right, so we need a close button. We need to add labels onto all this sort of stuff. So at this point, we have a dialogue, and the dialogue shifts focus to where it's got to go and all that sort of stuff. But we're not actually telling the user that it's a dialogue, right? So in terms of what is this thing and what does it do, all people really hear is sign in, and then they hear email address, and that's pretty good. But a user is going to want to know that it's a dialogue. For one thing, by knowing that it's a dialogue, you know that you can click the escape key, right? That's the first sign of saying, oh, I know that. Now, I've experienced other dialogues before. I can hit the escape key. We're good to go. All right, so let's see what happens here.
Voiceover on reload this page. Link. Super awesome company. Banner to link. Home. List 5 items. You are currently on a link. To reload this page. Everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility. Everything you need to know about JavaScript accessibility. Another menu 11 items. Say closing menu. He runs his eye down and finds that there are more exceptions to the rule than instances of it. So overboard.
All right.
Voiceover on, voiceover off.
This is what's awesome about doing these things live. All right.
Voiceover on, sign in button. You are currently on a button. To click this button, press Control Option
everything's
Space.
gone sideways now.
Atom, index.html, /Dropbox Chrome, reload this page, sign in button. Link, home, list 5 items. Atom, index. You are currently list index.html, step 8, edit text, blank, voiceover off.
Yeah, I think I saw that. Let's see, what do you say, Chrome? Set attribute of null. Oh, fuck me. All right, now I'm really doing the TV chef thing and just going to go for the whole thing. Oh, you're killing me. All right. Yeah, I'm doing something. Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah.
I did the JavaScript but not the HTML.
Oh, kill me. All right. Yes, I should have had the close button on the dialogue, huh? What do I call that thing? Close button.
Close button.
Is it over yet?
Voiceover on login, close
Oh
dialog.
my God,
email
now
address,
I'm really dying.
Login, close dialog, email address, Adam, voiceover off.
And then there was the time I tried doing live coding in front of hundreds of people. All right. I'm going full TV chef now. So I also have this on GitHub as its own dealio. So the the final bit is that we want to have a way to also hide all of the things. So I'm going to go through the rest of this code really quickly. From an accessibility perspective, there's a couple of things you also want to make sure you can do, and I'll try it try it for once.
Voice link, products. You are login, close dialog, email address, password, login, dialog, close dialog button. You are currently on a button inside of web content. To
All
click
right,
this
so
muting.
I can recover. So with a modal dialog, everybody thinks that because we have this stacked bunch of divs here, that we can't access any of this stuff, right? If I have my mouse or my trackpad and I go poking at all this stuff, I can't click on it. But the problem is, if you guys have noticed when it was going well, that I could tab the stuff that was behind there. Because that whole layering business doesn't mean squat to the tab key. You can still get focused to all that sort of stuff. And the idea of a modal dialog is one in which you don't want the user doing anything else. Okay, in this case it's a login button, but what if it was something else, like you were it wanted to confirm something before you were, or it wanted to give you your choices of departure locations for an airport. And then you'd select that, and then it loads a bunch of stuff. There's all sorts of other reasons to have something that's modal that's not a login dialog. There could be stuff coming from Ajax or whatever, and you don't want the user going anywhere outside of that. So you can add aria hidden equals true to all that sort of stuff, and also strip focus from all those things. So let me show you really quickly what I mean. In VoiceOver, if anybody here has a Mac, you can hit Control-Option-U.
Links menu.
And it brings you a list of all the things that are on, a bunch of things on the page. This is called the rotor. This brings you all the links on the page.
Headings menu.
Headings.
No items in web spot.
Web
Landmarks
spots
menu.
are stupid. Landmarks.
Non-visited links.
Non-visited
Auto
links.
web spots
Auto
menu.
web spots are even more stupid.
Window spots menu.
Window
Links
spots.
menu.
So you can see you can get access to these things. One of the things to note about screen reader users is they do not read the entire page. They do not tab through the entire page. No screen reader user I know actually tabs through the entire page. They typically will find something that they want to investigate, and then they will tab around from there. So in this case, for instance,
Headings menu.
I really want to learn about the awful German language. So I click on this.
4 items. Heading level
I'm
1,
taken
4
to that
items.
heading, and
The
then
awful
I might
German
tab
language
around,
by
or I might
link. Muting.
or I might arrow around. The same thing goes for anything else that's on the page. It'll give me lists of forms, right? So if I pulled up a list of forms, it would let me jump to the form and tab from there. So the fact that we can get access to that sort of stuff, even when the dialog is open, is bad, right? Because we could be getting access to things we don't want the user to be working with yet. So if I launch the dialog.
Close dialog. Email address. Headings menu. You are currently in a VoiceOver menu.
So now I have two headings.
This is a list of VoiceOver menu options. To navigate
The
up
awful
and
German
down,
language
heading
and log in.
Heading level 2. Heading level 2. Log
And then
in.
I can go from
Email,
there,
Password.
right?
Password. Secure edit text.
But
Headings
you notice
menu.
I don't
No
see
items,
any
landmarks,
links.
No auto web spots. Window spots menu. No items in links menu. You are currently in a voice. No items in links menu. Closing link password. Secure edit text. VoiceOver off.
So what we do, now there's a couple of ways to do this. This way I'm showing you is really janky. I'll talk about a better way to do that. Is I added a hidem method and an unhidem method. The hidem method basically says, for anything that is outside the dialog, when the dialog is open, for anything outside the dialog, I'm going to add aria hidden equals true so that it doesn't come up in that list. And then I'm going to add tab index equals -1 so I can prevent the user from tabbing to any of that stuff too. And then I just add this class because this class is going to be used as a selector in unhidem. And so in unhidem, what I do is I take the tab index, I put it back to 0, aria hidden equals false, and then I strip that off of there. There's actually a better way to do this I'll talk about more, but I'm going to go through and show you all these things. So basically, all I'm doing is when the dialog opens, I add the proper role, I add an aria label to the dialog. So now the user hears that they're on a dialog. They know what they're going to do from there. And then, so the dialog gets the focus and all that sort of stuff. The close does the exact opposite. And there's the whole this unhidem and all that sort of stuff. Another thing that you need to do that's really important is also to shift focus. So what I did is I added a new parameter to the close method that we didn't have before. And the close method is basically in this case it's going to be an ID or something like that, to shift focus where it has to go when the dialog closes. Now usually that's just going to be the sign-in button.
Voiceover on leaving web content. Login. Close dialog. Everything you need to know. Leaving web
And if
content.
that worked, that would have gone to the button, to the I know why it's not doing that. Anyway, I'll deal with that later. So the next location is in the DOM. It's going to be something you shift focus to. If you hit escape, it's going to go back to the button. We want to make sure that the user interaction is circular. But if it's something else, like we shift focus in a single page app to a new location, you're going to shift that focus to that. And so explicitly handling focus is extremely important for accessibility in terms of it may be obvious for us to see what's on the screen to get focus. It's not going to be obvious to a user from a screen reader where that thing is going to be unless you send them to that. And I'm done butchering myself on the stage. Any questions?
Round of applause, please, for Karl. That was fun. I really enjoyed that. The fact that it went kind of off the rails just added to the charm.
Thanks.
Frankly.
I appreciate it.
And for my money, I think the expression browser says, fuck it, is the new computer says no. So I'm going to be using that quite a lot. I have a question.
Yeah.
And my question is, we all know that web spots are stupid, but what are they?
Okay. So this is actually sort of a similar feature to some of the things that you can do in other screen readers like JAWS, which is if you have an application or a website that you use really frequently, you can define it. You can define specific spots on that page that you go to a lot. So if it's like Twitter or something like that, and you want to go to the thing to enter your status, you can define a web spot, and then you activate a custom shortcut key, and it'll go right to it. The auto web spots are actually what's really stupid, is because they just do a terrible job of guessing.
It uses, like a crap algorithm to work it out. Yeah, okay, cool. Does anyone else have any other questions? I can't see it. Oh, right, okay, cool. Hold on just a moment.
While we're waiting for that question, this guy, Scott Vinkel, created a ES6 style version of what I have it's called Launchy, and his actually works. So, yeah.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. It's very good.
Thank you.
We were mentioning that there was a quicker or better method to hide or unhide the other focusable or actionable elements.
Yeah.
Do you care to explain or?
Yeah, so what happens is, in this case, when you're going through this stuff and you're looping through all this is really expensive. Like performance people would kill me if they saw this. What you can do actually is you can instead just wrap everything around like a div like this called div ID wrap, and that has your actual content in it. And then you just keep the dialogue out of that div, and by doing so, the hiding stuff is a lot easier. You add aria hidden equals true onto that thing and all that sort of stuff. And that's what I was mentioning about Scott's example, is because he does exactly that. It's just we have one thing now that we hide, and everything else we don't have to worry about. Yeah.
Would I be right in saying that the inert attribute would make this a lot easier?
Yeah, that's another thing that Scott's thing does, is it
okay.
Makes
cool, so
inert.
if you put the inert attribute, did you explain that already?
No, I didn't.
Okay, so the inert attribute, it's like the same as aria hidden, right? But it stops, it actually stops focus as well. And the cool thing, of course, is that you can do it to the parent element, and that would apply to all of the focusable elements as children, so you don't actually have to loop through and do it to every individual element.
Yeah, because it's really bad performance-wise in both directions, when you open it and when you close it. And the only reason I even did it that way was just to show all the stuff that you need to consider in terms of making sure a user can't get to anything.
Yeah, cool. Any more questions? Yeah. Let me squeeze through. Okay, yep, I can hear that.
Do you think about accessibility of frameworks like Bootstrap or jQuery? And do you have a special...
I'm going to sit down for this one.
My good friend Patrick Lauka has handled a lot of Bootstrap accessibility stuff, and most of the Bootstrap stuff really is, you just read the damn documentation, because a lot of their stuff is already pretty accessible, and a lot of the accessibility problems happen because people just aren't RTFMing, and that's that. Now, in terms of like jQuery UI, when they released 1.9, it included a whole pile of accessibility improvements that had come from a project between the Paciolo Group, AOL, and the Aegis project. Hans Hillen fixed a whole bunch of stuff, and they sort of merged all of his changes in there. So almost all of the original jQuery UI widgets were made accessible at that point, except for Slider, which is dumb because Slider's really easy to fix for accessibility. From subsequent releases, it's been mostly pretty good. And for the most part, you're really dealing with, in most cases, if you have easy access to the code there, it's really easy to make the necessary changes. So the fact that jQuery 1.9 didn't fix the slider doesn't mean that you can't fix it yourself, because it's really easy. When you get into trouble, though, is when there's a whole lot of presentation logic and business logic tied into the widgets, like older versions of Sencha, like before version 4, they were horrible. It was like impossible to make a Sencha grid accessible because you'd have to reverse engineer the whole thing. Yeah, so in terms of almost all the frameworks out there have some efforts being made to make them more accessible. For instance, Dojo, the Digit framework, has a criteria for their funding from IBM is that their stuff be keyboard accessible and have good color contrast.
So with jQuery UI, I guess, so if it isn't accessible, because like the modern jQuery UI has like events on the prototype, so it has an open, like an open method rather, then I guess you can then add your focus the element inside that method, so you can sort of, without hacking the core, I guess you can fix it.
As a matter of fact, I did that with their jQuery UI dialog.
Whilst he's finding that, is there any more questions?
This one works too, I promise. It just extends the exact same. It's a drop-in replacement and extends the existing jQuery UI thing.
Yeah, so you didn't have to worry about an update to the main library screwing it up, kind of thing. It's a question over here. Cool.
Thank you.
Just asking something general about what does accessibility mean exactly when we talk about the group of users. So is it possible it's always a synonym for blind people? But are there other group of impaired people blind?
Well, there should be, because in terms of pure statistics, blind people are among the smallest population of people with disabilities. It just so happens that we tend to talk about blind people when we're talking about accessibility because we can think, the web is this visual medium, and you can think, holy crap, how could I ever interact with something so visual with a screen reader barking at me the whole time? Really, I mean, so we think of it that way, but accessibility, I mean, in terms of what it is, one of the things that I tell people during training is that we can't put people into buckets. People do not fit into buckets. In the United States, 54 million people have a disability of some kind that affects their ability to work. But if you count up the number of people who are blind versus low vision versus cognitively impaired versus motor impaired and all that sort of stuff, that number actually ends up to be more like 78 million. So how do we rectify that? It's because a lot of people have more than one disability. And so if we put people into distinct buckets, we're shortening, we're sort of giving them the short straw because they don't fit into buckets. And this is where things like inclusive design and all that sort of stuff really matter, because we're thinking more in terms of what the design should support, and not just like what person, but what ranges of abilities and stuff like that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and of course there's temporary disabilities as well. I think a lot of the time we think about disabilities being just permanent things or things which define people. But of course, I broke my wrist recently kickboxing, and I
That's what you tell people, but that's not really.
actually it was training. It was not punching a person. So, and I had a lovely pink cast for a while, so I was able to do a couple of talks about accessibility with the thing on. So, yeah.
I know a guy who wrote a book about inclusive design.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. You should get my book. Thank you for that. Yeah.
Now I only owe you one pint.
So we'll go even on beers now. Any more questions before we go to the bar?
Yeah.
And, you're stopping people from going to the bar.
That's all right.
He's
buying
kidding.
the next beer.
Just a quick one. Brings me to another question, because it's not only about blindness, right? It's about just using keyboard only, for instance, to tap from to the next link and so. But is there any method out there to be accessible for more touch-related devices, or more another direction? I mean, because some friends of mine, they are more using touch devices, and it's hard to use for them because they are, for instance, it's heavy to. My English is a bit bad, but
that's okay. My German's terrible.
It's hard for them to.
Yeah. So, as a matter of fact, what we're finding now is that a lot more people with disabilities are using mobile devices instead of computers. Even people who are blind, a lot of my friends actually prefer to use touch devices. All accessibility, or all mobile platforms have some sort of accessibility features built in. I happen to like Apple's the most. As you can see, I happen to like Apple everything the most. But Android is catching up. Android has TalkBack. Even BlackBerry is still around, and they have a screen reader, which is pretty awesome. But so they have assistive touch stuff. You can change the way that the interactions work. So basically, lots of things that you would do would be swipe interactions. But you can also make it so that touching is more like you can click and hold to do things and stuff like that. Patrick Lauka has done a ton of research on touch stuff. So I definitely recommend following him. But when we talk about keyboard accessibility, typically what we really mean is like any alternate device that's not a mouse accessibility. Because a keyboard is, first off, it's the one universal thing on an actual computer that everybody uses. If they have a disability, for the most part, it's going to be a keyboard. Like if a screen reader user, they can't see the screen, they're going to be using that. But then the other thing is like a lot of additional devices that people can have, like foot-operated mice or something like that. They have one-handed keyboards. They have all sorts of really crazy devices, and a lot of those, at the system level, perform the same things that a keyboard would as well. So we tend to think of keyboard as a keyboard, but it's really sort of a mishmash of whatever the keyboard can do. That's what we want to support. And ultimately, the click event is always fired on a mobile phone, as far as I understand from Patrick's stuff. Yeah. So supporting that is going to be helpful as well. Supporting both key down, key press, all that sort of stuff.
And make sure the buttons on your mobile device are large so that people can target them. Yeah. Otherwise, if you got fiddly little things, then yeah. I think we should probably wrap it up now. Thank you everyone ever so much.